What's going on? So today we build mallets. I've got every single type of hammer that you can own except for a mallet. So today we build two. We're going to build one small detail mallet with a head about 4 inches by 2 1/4. And we're going to build one bigger dead blow mallet with a head of about 5 inches by 2 1/2 inches. Let us build. I've got some curly maple and some sapele scrap. I think we'll do inverse colors for the two mallets so they'll match. So let's mill it up. Okay, so we've got our wood milled up. I think we have enough to get 2 of the smaller sections and 1 of the large sections from this, as well as a handle. And we should be able to get 2 of the larger sections and the smaller section from this, and a handle from this. So, so the mallets will be alternates of each other. So after looking at this head, I think this is way too thick. I'm gonna resaw these 2 outside pieces down on the table saw, since they're too small to plane, probably to about 5/8 to bring this whole thing to 2 1/4 width. So I've got these cut down. This seems like a much more appropriate width for a finishing mallet. The resaw went pretty smooth. Got the saw tuned up nice. Next thing to do is we're going to cut the angle into the centerpiece for the handle. And then we will also put in the cavities for the dead blow in the larger mallet head. Here I measured out to mark the cut at approximately the middle of the piece. The cut does not have to be exactly in the middle. The whole mallet head will be cut to size later. Because of this, I probably could have cut the stock for the middle pieces a little smaller. It didn't have to be the exact same size as the rest. We'll have a little bit of waste, but that's okay. I'm marking the angles that I'm going to be cutting with a sliding bevel that I set using a protractor. I pulled an angle of 5 degrees out of my butt here, no clue why I decided to use that. We only need to make one angled cut because the offcut can be flipped around to have the opposite angle. I marked lines on both pieces to have a 1-inch gap between the narrower side of the middle pieces. This is to allow space for the handle to insert into the head. For the larger mallet, there will be a dead blow. I marked approximately where the edges of the mallet will end up based off of one of the side pieces. I figured out what size hole would fit in there and leave plenty of material for the faces. And I marked where I wanted to drill that hole. After that, I center punched the hole, chucked the Forstner bit up in the drill press, and drilled both pieces out. The glue up for the small mallet was super simple. Put glue on all the faces, clamp it up, make sure the faces are lined up, and clean off the squeeze out with a damp paper towel. I cleaned out the inside as best as possible with a straw that had the end cut at an angle. Honestly, this is the best way to get glue out of tight corners. I use it all the time. I keep a big pack of straws in the workbench and just cut pieces off of them. For the bigger mallet, we had a little more to do. I started by gluing one of the side pieces to the middle pieces with a combination of super glue and wood glue. Using the super glue here will act as a clamp for the wood glue, so I don't need to have big clamps in my way while trying to figure out the dead blow part of things. I can clean up as much squeeze out as possible while I have this open, which makes this way easier. All right, to give our mallet the dead blow, I've got some lead shot. To protect myself from the lead. I'm not sure if this is necessary, but I'm going to put on rubber gloves because I have them. Hopefully I don't touch the lead at all, but better safe than sorry. So I think I'm going to fill this up probably maybe 2/3. I want to give the shot the ability to move around. Maybe even more like half. I think half seems good. I'm going to do that on both sides. And then we're going to finish the glue up. So here we're going to use the same method of gluing with super glue on the outside and just a little bit of wood glue on the inside. I'm taking care to stay away from the holes as best as possible. I don't want wood glue getting in there with the lead shot. Once I get that glue on there, we're going to stick the last side piece on there and check for alignment and then clamp it up. Yeah. Get some clamps on that thing. I'll just leave these to dry. And we'll start working on the handles. So I realized after thinking about this a little bit that if we go ahead and cut this out on the bandsaw and shape the handle, then there's no way to make sure that the shoulders are square to the rest of the handle. So I think what we're going to do is take this jig that I worked up and go ahead and cut the shoulders here, where this will insert into the mallet head, and then after that we will put the template on it again on the back and mark it out and make sure that it's square to the cuts that we had already made. And we'll do that for both of them. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Now that we've got our shoulders accurately cut using our rectangular handle blank, we can lay our templates back out on the handles and redraw our cut lines using the template shoulders referenced against the shoulders that we just cut. This way we know everything's nice and accurate. We can also go ahead and mark out for the 10-end slot on the handle where we're going to put our wedge, and we can go ahead and center punch where we're going to drill a hole to hopefully keep the handle from splitting at that point. Once we drill out the hole at the drill press, we can cut that handle slot using the same jig that we used before. So y'all probably saw in the last clip that I followed the wrong template lines. I followed the lines from the first time we copied the template, and here are the lines on the back. So I ended up a good 1/8 of an inch inside the template line on this side. I think I'm going to just try and save this because I don't have another piece that is the correct size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back on here and space it in a similar amount. We may end up with a very narrow handle, but I think that is better than the alternative. Now that we've got that figured out, we can get back to the bandsaw and cut out our template, hopefully correctly this time. This bandsaw isn't tuned up the best, but it does okay. After that, we can roughly sand the handles using the belt sander and the disc sander, tuning up the end of it, and then tuning up the actual profile of the handle. This probably isn't the greatest tool for the job. It was pretty hard to keep the handle 90 degrees to the belt, but the end product turned out pretty decent, so I'm okay with it. Now we can cut the wedges to secure the head of the mallet to the handle. These will be opposite color to the handle of the wood. We can cut these out of the scrap of the middle pieces of the mallet since they're already the right thickness. We just need to cut at the same angle that we cut the middle piece at, then flip it and cut it again. Now to clean up the top and bottom faces. We just want to take off as little material as possible. We already have the mortise sized how we want, so we really just want to clean up any glue squeeze out and any discrepancy in the glue up. Then we're going to clean the ends of the mallet heads. The larger of the mallets we will cut at 90 degrees to the top, and the smaller we'll cut at 87 degrees or a 3-degree angle. The last step before sanding is to round over all the edges of the handles with a 1/2 inch round over bit. We want to take light passes to avoid any major tear out on the ends. Just be careful with the small bits that we're doing. Keep your fingers away from the router bit. Then we just run a chamfer around the edges, whatever looks good, and we're ready for sanding. I hand sanded the heads of the mallets up to 150 grit using a hard sanding block. This way I avoid softening any of the chamfer edges or rounding any of the faces over. Then I sanded the handles up to 120 grit using a soft sanding block that'll let me sand all the roundovers without flattening them out. Anywhere I need a harder surface or to sand a steeper inside curve, I use a sanding disc wrapped around a dowel. I surrounded the mortises and the mallet head with blue tape to avoid getting glue squeeze out all over my freshly sanded wood, and then it was time to glue. This glue up shouldn't have been anything crazy. I just spread an even layer of wood glue around the inside of the mortise, slid the handle in, spread wood glue on the wedge, and tapped it in with a framing hammer. I used an offcut I had sitting around to tap the wedge below the exposed part of the handle. I probably should have cut this bit of the handle off beforehand just to give myself more space to tap in the wedge, but it worked out okay. So I made a pretty big mistake on this mallet. I think I made the wedge a little bit too long, so I can't drive it down far enough, but also I made the angle on the inside too wide, so I actually split the handle and I couldn't drive the wedge deep enough to fully seat inside the handle. And also there's a gap between the handle and the top of the mallet. It's too late to do anything about that with this one, so this will be a good lesson learned. A lot of time into this, and hopefully it'll still be a little usable, but definitely not as pretty or as good as it could have been. So because of that, I cut the wedge shorter on here. This should be big enough. It may still split. We'll have to see, because I used the same angle on the small one and the large one. So I guess we'll just have to see what happens. The second glue up went way smoother than the first. No issues on this one. Once the glue dried, we could cut the exposed handle off with a flush cut saw and peel off the blue tape. The blue tape did a great job keeping any glue squeeze out off the finished faces of the mallets. After a quick sanding to flush up the top face and clean it up, it's time for finish. I used Rubio Monocoat Pure, mostly because I already had it out for a different project. You could use whatever finish you want here. I would probably use plain boiled linseed oil. It's worked for hundreds of years, and I'm pretty sure it's one of the main ingredients in Rubio. The finishing process is where you really start to appreciate the work you've put in. Look at that beautiful contrast between the handle and the wedge. I want to talk about the lessons I learned while building these and how you guys can avoid making the same mistakes that I did. But first, B-roll. So this was a really fun project for me. I made a lot of mistakes. I learned a lot while doing it for sure. Some of those mistakes I attribute to filming my first YouTube video and having to think of camera shots and moving the camera around, getting that set up. Hopefully those will just get better with doing this more. Some of the other mistakes I think are probably due to not having made a mallet before and not really thinking through what I was doing. There's 3 big mistakes that really affected this one more than this one, but they resulted in a gap here at the top and cracks in the handle. So the first big mistake was that I made the angle in the mallet head on both of them too steep. This definitely showed itself more on the bigger mallet just because it's bigger, there's more space, but I had to drive the handle so far apart that I actually couldn't spread it far enough apart to take up the whole gap. And also I had to make the wedge too thick. Spreading it so far apart actually caused the handle to crack. That happened a little bit on the smaller one, but not as much. It's not as noticeable. If I had to do this again, I would probably only cut a 2-degree angle. I think mine was closer to 5. That's just something I maybe should have thought of, but I'll definitely know now. The other thing that kind of ties into that is I glued in the handles. I should not have glued in the handles. Now if I have to replace them or if I wanted to fix this one, I can't do that. The wedge action is enough to hold the handle in, and that's really all you need. The last mistake is more aesthetic, a little functional. I probably would not have put as heavy of a chamfer on, especially this bigger mallet. It really reduced the usable face of the mallet, and I think it looks okay, but I think it would look a little better with a bit of a tamer chamfer. So lessons learned. Hopefully you learned a lot. I know I did. I won't need to make another one of these for a while, but when I do, hopefully it'll just be better next time. If you want to keep learning along with me, watch me make mistakes and hopefully make less yourself, please subscribe. There'll be more coming like this. You know, I pretend like I know what I'm doing sometimes, but really I'm just figuring it out as I go. Thank you.